The day started like any other on Station Delta 3. The sun rose slowly over the curve of Earth, casting long shadows across the metal skin of the orbiting base. Inside, the hum of machines filled the air. People moved through the halls with quiet purpose. Engineers, techs, medics, and support staff going about their usual routines. In one of the maintenance bays, a man named Daniel Mercer was crouched beside a broken coolant line. He had grease on his hands and sweat on his forehead. He wore a faded jumpsuit with the name Delta stitched onto the chest and a pair of old boots that had seen better days. He was 37 years old, not tall but solid. His face was weathered from years of hard work and harder memories. Once, he had been part of the Marines. Now he just fixed things. "You ever gonna fix that pipe, Dan?" said a voice from above. Daniel looked up to see Lisa Hawkins leaning over the railing. She was a systems engineer with sharp eyes and a sharper sense of humor. "Give me 5 more minutes," he said, tightening a bolt. 5 more minutes always turns into an hour with you. Then maybe you should stop checking up on me." She smiled and walked off, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Daniel went back to work. The pipe hissed and spat steam as he tightened the last fitting. When it finally stopped leaking, he leaned back and wiped his brow. His comm buzzed. "Hey, Dan," came the voice of his friend and co-worker, Mark Ellis. "You seeing this?" Daniel tapped his wrist device and pulled up the news feed. It showed grainy footage of a planet far from Earth, Colburn 9. The screen flickered between images of burning fields, fleeing civilians, and strange ships hanging. In the sky like dark clouds, a message scrolled at the bottom. "Galactic Union requests aid. Alien armada approaching colony. Urgent call for military assistance." Daniel read the words again. Then again. Something about them stuck in his head. He stood slowly, looking out the nearby viewport. Earth floated below, blue and green and peaceful. "They're really asking for help," Mark said. "Looks like it. Hope someone answers." Daniel didn't respond. He stared at the message, watching it repeat over and over. Later that night, most of the station slept. Lights dimmed in the corridors, and only a few techs remained on duty. Daniel sat alone, in the mess hall, staring at a cold cup of coffee. The message still played on his mind. He pulled up his personal terminal and typed in a search. Colburn 9. New colony. Low population. No military presence. Barely even mapped until 5 years. He watched a short video uploaded by a colonist. A woman with tired eyes held a baby while talking about how they built homes from scrap metal and grew food in hydroponic labs. "We're just trying to make a life here," she said. "But now we're being told we might not get the chance." Daniel closed the video. He sat there for a long time. Then he opened a new window. It asked for volunteers willing to assist in emergency evacuations or defense efforts. He hovered his finger over the submit button. For a moment, he almost laughed. What could he do? He wasn't a soldier anymore. He was just a mechanic. What good would one man be against an entire fleet? But then he thought about the faces in that video, about the little girl who waved at the camera and said she wanted to grow up to be a pilot. He clicked submit. The next morning, word spread quickly through the station. Someone had volunteered. Not just anyone. Dan Mercer. Most people thought he was joking. Others thought he'd lost his mind. "Wait, you're serious?" Mark asked. "Yeah. Dan, you're not even military anymore." "Doesn't matter." "It does matter. You can't fight an alien army by yourself." Daniel didn't answer right away. He packed his gear into a small bag. Tools, rations, a worn photo of his sister and nephew back home. "I'm not going to fight," he said finally. "I'm going to help." Mark shook his head. "This is insane." "Maybe. What if you don't come back?" Daniel paused. He looked at his friend, then at the floor. "Then at least I tried." He left the station 2 days later. The shuttle ride was quiet. He sat alone, watching Earth shrink behind him. Soon, stars filled the view. The blackness of space stretched out in every direction. He thought about the stories he used to hear as a kid. Heroes flying off to save the galaxy. Brave soldiers fighting impossible odds. Those were just stories. Now, he felt like he was stepping into one. The shuttle docked at a supply freighter called the Dawn's Edge. It was old, patched together with mismatched parts, and smelled faintly of oil and burnt toast. The captain, a grizzled woman named Kate Reynolds, raised an eyebrow when she saw him. "You're the volunteer?" she asked. "Yeah." "Just you?" "Just me," she sighed. "Kid, you know what you're getting into?" "I have an idea." "Well, you've got guts, that's for sure." She led him to a storage bay where crates were stacked high. "We're carrying what we can spare," she said. "Some old rifles, med kits, a couple of drones. Nothing fancy." "Better than nothing." She nodded. "All right, welcome aboard, Mercer." As the ship made its way toward Colburn 9, Daniel spent his time preparing. He checked the weapons, tested the drones, and reviewed what little intel was available. The aliens were known as the Zalari, tall, insect-like creatures with advanced technology and no interest in diplomacy. Their fleet was massive, dozens of warships, hundreds of drop pods, thousands of soldiers, and the humans had nothing. No fleet, no defenses, no plan, just a few scattered colonies hoping nobody noticed them. Until now. Daniel watched footage of the Zalari landing on the outskirts of Colburn 9. Their machines tore through forests and melted buildings to ash. He clenched his fists. "This isn't going to be easy," Kate said, standing beside him. "Never said it would be." "So why are you doing this?" He looked at her. "Because someone has to." 3 weeks into the journey, the first reports came in. The Galactic Union had sent messages to dozens of species. Some responded with promises of ships or supplies. Most never replied, but one signal stood out. It was from a human colony near Alpha Centauri. "We will send help." Another came from a mining outpost in the belt. "Tell us what you need." Then another, and another. Word had spread. Dan Mercer, the lone human, had answered the call, and now others were following. Kate read the updates with wide eyes. "You're starting a movement. Don't get ahead of yourself," he said. "We haven't done anything yet." "Doesn't matter. People are watching. They're inspired." Daniel didn't say much. He just kept working. When the Dawn's Edge dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the sight took their breath away. Colburn 9 was under siege. Ships circled the skies like vultures. Smoke rose from the ground. Explosions lit up the horizon, and on the surface, the Zalari marched forward without resistance. Kate looked at Daniel. "This is it," he nodded. "You still want to go down there?" "More than ever." She gave him a long look, then she smiled. "All right, tough guy. Let's get you planetside." The shuttle dropped fast through the thick smoke. Alarms beeped inside the cockpit. Lights blinked red and yellow. The pilot, a young man named Ryan, kept his hands tight on the controls. "This is insane," he muttered. Daniel sat behind him, checking his gear one last time. The suit he wore was old but still worked. It had been pulled from storage, patched up, and given to him with no guarantees. The helmet was cracked, but it would hold for now. Outside the window, the world burned. Trees were on fire. Buildings had collapsed. In the distance, alien ships hovered like dark clouds. Strange machines moved across the land, shooting blue beams that melted everything they touched. Colburn 9 was not ready for war. The shuttle shook as it passed through a blast wave. Daniel gripped the seat. "Hold on," Ryan shouted. They hit, the ground hard. Dust flew everywhere. The back door opened with a hiss. Daniel stood. He looked outside. Smoke. Noise. Fear. And a woman waiting for him. She was tall, older than him, with short hair and tired eyes. She wore a heavy coat and carried a sidearm at her hip. Next to her stood a boy no older than 10 holding her hand. "You must be Mercer," she said. "That's me." "Sheriff Linda Carter," she said, offering a hand. He shook it. "Glad. You made it." "Barely," he said. She nodded toward the city behind her. "We don't have much time. The Zalari are moving in fast. Then we move faster." They walked through the ruins of what used to be a town. Now it was mostly broken walls and empty streets. People were leaving, packing what little they could into carts and trucks. A few armed colonists stood guard near the main road. They looked scared but ready. Linda led Daniel to a small building that served as a command post. Maps were pinned to the walls. Radios crackled with voices. "This is all we've got," she said. "A handful of people with guns they barely know how to use. No real training, no air support, nothing." Daniel looked around. "Where are the Zilleri?" "North of here. They landed 3 days ago. They're taking the land slowly, burning everything in their path." He studied the map. Marked spots showed where the aliens had landed. More marks showed where colonists had tried to fight back and failed. He pointed to a narrow valley between 2 hills. "How far is this place from their front line?" "About 5 clicks." "Why? Good place for an ambush." Linda raised an eyebrow. "You really think we can take them?" "Not head on. But if we use the terrain, set traps, and strike fast, we might slow them down." "Slow them down? Dan, they're coming to kill us all. Then we make them pay for every step." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue either. "All right," she said. "Show me what you've got." By nightfall, they had gathered what weapons they could find. Rifles, pistols, a few old grenades. Some colonists brought tools, hammers, welding torches, anything that could be used in a fight. Daniel organized them into small teams. He gave each group a task: dig trenches, build barriers, set traps. He taught them how to move quietly, how to listen before they shot, how to stay calm when things went wrong. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. As they worked, Linda watched closely. "You've done this before," she said. "A long time ago," he replied. "Why come back to it?" He looked out over the land. "Because someone has to stand." The first attack came just after dawn. A loud hum filled the sky, then a flash, then fire. A Zilleri dropship landed nearby. Tall, insect-like soldiers poured out. They moved fast, firing glowing weapons that tore through trees and stone. Daniel and his team were waiting. He crouched behind a rock, watching through his scope. He saw the enemy spread out, looking for targets. "Now," he whispered. A bomb exploded under their feet. The shockwave knocked several down. Gunfire followed. The colonists fired from hidden positions. They didn't aim to kill. They aimed to scare, to confuse. The Zilleri returned fire, but they couldn't tell where the shots were coming from. Daniel moved quickly. He took out 2 enemies with quick, silent shots, then rolled away before they could spot him. From another position, Linda fired her rifle. Beside her, the boy who held her hand earlier now helped reload magazines. "Stay low," she told him. He nodded, eyes wide but steady. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When the dust settled, the Zilleri were gone. Some ran back to their ship. Others lay motionless on the ground. Daniel checked the bodies. The armor was tough, but not unbreakable. He picked up one of their weapons. It was heavier than his own, but it packed a punch. He looked at Linda. "They'll be back. Then we'll be ready." After the fight, word spread fast. A human had arrived. He had fought. He had won. People started sending messages, calls for help, offers of aid. On other colonies, humans read about what happened on Colburn 9. Some laughed. Most cried. A few packed their bags. One message came from a mining colony on Titan's Edge. "We heard what you did. We're coming." Another came from a deep space station orbiting Mars. "We may not be soldiers, but we can fight." And another from Earth itself. "Send us coordinates. We'll bring what we can." Daniel read each one with quiet hope. He wasn't alone anymore. But the Zilleri didn't stop. 2 days later, they returned with more forces. Bigger ships, heavier weapons, more soldiers. The colonists fell back to higher ground. They built new defenses, laid more traps, and waited. Daniel walked among them, talking, listening, helping. He wasn't their leader by rank. He was their leader by action. Whenever someone lost hope, he reminded them why they were fighting. "We're not just trying to survive," he said. We're showing them what humans are made of. Linda stood beside him. You really believe that? I do. Then let's show them. The second battle was worse than the first. The Zalari attacked from the sky and the ground. They dropped pods filled with soldiers. They sent drones that flew fast and shot with deadly precision. The colonists fought hard. They used explosives, traps, and even old farming equipment turned into weapons. Daniel led a team through the woods, flanking the enemy. He moved fast, thinking ahead. He knew the Zalari liked to focus on one target at a time, so he split his forces, forcing them to divide attention. He found a drone hiding behind a tree. He threw a grenade. It exploded in a flash of light. He ducked behind cover as bullets tore through the air. Nearby, Linda dragged a wounded colonist to safety. Get him out of here, she shouted. Others rushed forward, pulling the injured away. Daniel spotted a Zalari officer leading the charge. Tall, armored, giving orders through a translator device. He aimed carefully. Shot once. The officer fell. The rest of the Zalari hesitated. Daniel didn't wait. He signaled the retreat. Fall back! Fall back! They ran uphill, disappearing into the trees. The Zalari followed, right into the trap. The moment they stepped into the clearing, bombs went off. Rocks tumbled down the slope. Fire burst from hidden barrels of fuel. The Zalari screamed. Some fled, others died, and the colonists, hiding in the trees, watched in stunned silence. Then cheers broke out. They had done it again. As night fell, the survivors regrouped. Fires burned in the distance. The smell of smoke and metal filled the air. Daniel sat near a small campfire cleaning his weapon. Linda joined him. You're changing things, she said. No, he replied. We're changing things. She smiled a little. Still doesn't feel real. It's real enough. They watched the stars above. The same stars that hung over Earth. The same stars that guided travelers across space. Far away, ships were already on their way. Humans were coming, not because they were ordered, because they chose to. The wind blew hard across the hills of Colburn 9. Smoke still rose from burned trees and broken buildings. The ground was littered with the remains of weapons, armor, and bodies. Some human, most not. Daniel Mercer stood on a ridge, looking down, at the battlefield below. The Zalari had pulled back again, but he knew they wouldn't stay gone for long. He wiped sweat from his forehead and checked his rifle. It was old, heavy, and dented in places. But it still worked. Just like him. Behind him, colonists were setting up new defenses. Some were young, barely more than kids. Others were older, farmers and workers who never thought they'd be holding guns. Linda Carter walked up beside him. Her coat was torn and there was blood on her arm. Not hers, someone else's. They'll come back, she said. Yeah, he replied. But we'll be ready. She looked out over the land. How are you doing this, Dan? How are you keeping people going? He didn't answer right away. He watched a group of volunteers dragging sandbags into place. One of them was the boy who had held Linda's hand when they first met. Now he carried a pack full of supplies without being asked. It's not me, Daniel finally said. It's all of us. We're showing what humans can do when we stand, together. Linda gave him a tired smile. Hope that's enough. It has to be. Word spread fast across human space. A lone man had answered a call for help. Now entire groups were coming. On Titan's Edge, a mining crew loaded up their trucks with explosives and spare parts. On Mars Station, engineers built makeshift turrets. Using old ship parts even on Earth, people were watching. Some called it madness. Others saw something different. Pride. One message came through clearly. We're coming. And they meant it. Ships started arriving in orbit above Colburn 9. Small freighters, cargo haulers, even old military shuttles that hadn't flown in years. They weren't fancy. They weren't fast. But they were filled with humans who had decided to fight. Daniel stood near the landing zone when the first one touched down. The ramp lowered, and a woman stepped out. She wore a heavy jacket and had a scar across her cheek. Heard. You could use some help, she said. "Who are you?" Daniel asked. "Name's Molly. Used to fly fighter jets before they grounded me." He smiled. "Glad to have you." Others followed. A man named Tom, who used to drive bulldozers on Titan's Edge, a medic named Anna, who had served on deep space missions. A group of teens from a colony on Europa who had learned to fight using training sims. They brought tools, weapons, food, and hope. With the new arrivals, the plan changed. No longer just trying to survive, the humans began pushing back. Molly took control of the air support, or what little they had. She flew an old scout ship and taught others how to handle the few drones they had. Tom led a team that built traps, using mining, charges, and scrap metal. Anna set up a field hospital in the remains of an old school building. She treated the wounded, no matter who they were, and Daniel kept leading from the front. He trained new fighters, planned attacks, and moved quickly between positions. He wasn't just giving orders. He was fighting alongside everyone else. Linda stayed close, helping organize the defense and protect the civilians who hadn't yet escaped. "You know," she said one night as they sat by the fire, "most armies have generals. You're running around like a foot soldier." "I'm better at that," he said. "Still don't make sense." He shrugged. "Doesn't have to." The next attack came under cover of darkness. Solari dropships landed silently, releasing squads of insect-like soldiers. They moved fast, spreading out through the woods. Daniel was the first to spot them. He was on watch duty, scanning the trees with his scope when he saw movement. "Contact," he whispered into his radio. Within minutes, the camp was alive with motion. Fighters grabbed weapons, medics prepared bandages, and lookouts reported enemy positions. Daniel led a team through the forest, moving quietly between trees. They ambushed a squad of Zilari near a stream, taking them down before they could send a signal. Back at the main base, Molly launched the drones. They flew low, dropping flashbangs and small explosives to confuse the enemy. Tom's team triggered traps hidden along the roads. Mines exploded. Nets dropped from trees. Fuel lines burst into flame. The Xilari tried to regroup, but they were losing control. For the first time, they were not just facing scattered colonists. They were facing a real resistance. After hours of fighting, the Xilari pulled back again. This time, they left behind more than just bodies. They left behind weapons, maps, and even a few prisoners. Daniel stood over one of the captured Xilari. It was tall, covered in chitinous armor and barely breathing. He looked at the alien and asked, "Why are you here?" The Xilari hissed something through its translator device. The words were broken, but one part was clear. "Your kind should not resist." Daniel crouched down. "Then maybe you shouldn't have picked the wrong species to mess with." He turned to Linda. "Get someone to translate this thing. I want to know everything it knows." She nodded and signaled a few others to take the prisoner away. As the sun rose, the survivors gathered to assess the damage. They had lost people, they had lost supplies, but they had won another round, and the message was clear. The Xilari were afraid, not because the humans were stronger, because they refused to stop fighting. More ships arrived that day. From Jupiter's belt came a team of engineers who helped build new defenses. From a trade station near Alpha Centauri came crates of food, medicine, and batteries. And from Earth itself, a message. "We see what you're doing. We're sending help." Daniel read the message and folded the paper carefully. He placed it in his pocket. He didn't need it for luck. He needed it to remember why he was here. That night, the survivors held a small ceremony. They lit a fire in the center of the camp. People gathered around, sharing stories, eating what little food they had, and laughing despite everything. Molly told jokes about the old days in the Sky Force. Tom bragged about how he once drove a bulldozer through a wall. Even the kids laughed. Daniel sat quietly, listening. Linda joined him. "You ever think you'd be here, Dan?" "No," he said, "but I'm glad I am." She looked at the fire. "We've got a chance, don't we?" "We always did. Just didn't know it." He smiled. "Now we do." As the stars shined, above, the Xilari fleet remained in orbit, watching, waiting, planning. but so were the humans. And when the next battle came, they would be ready. Not just with weapons, but with heart, with will, with the unshakable truth that no matter how big the enemy, humans would never stop standing. The sky turned red the next morning, not with sunrise, but with fire. A Zilari warship broke through the clouds and hovered over the hills. It was massive, black, and covered in glowing lines that pulsed like veins. Behind it, more ships followed, dozens of them. They had come back, but this time they weren't just attacking, they were taking control. Daniel Mercer stood on a ridge with his binoculars pressed to his eyes. He watched as the Zilari deployed new machines, tall, spider-like walkers with heavy weapons. They moved fast, crushing everything in their path. He lowered the binoculars and looked at Linda Carter beside him. "This isn't just another attack," he said. "This is an invasion." She nodded. "They're not trying to scare us anymore. They want to wipe us out." He handed her the binoculars. "Then we make sure they regret it." Back at the base, the humans worked fast. Molly was in the air, flying one of the old scout ships. She led a small team of pilots who had never flown real combat before but now had no choice. Tom and his team built more traps. They used old mining explosives, fuel tanks, and anything else that could go boom. Anna ran the field hospital, preparing for the worst. Beds were lined up along the floor, bandages stacked high, blood packs ready. And Daniel moved between everyone, giving orders, checking gear, and keeping morale high. "We can't stop them all," he told a group of fighters, "but if we slow them down long enough, help will come." "What if it doesn't?" someone asked. "Then we make them remember." This day, the first wave hit hard. Zilari dropships landed across the valley. Soldiers poured out, moving fast and shooting beams of blue light that melted stone and steel alike. The humans fought back. From hidden positions, they fired rifles and homemade explosives. They set traps that flipped enemy machines onto their backs. They used smoke and fire to confuse the Zilari sensors. Daniel led a team through the forest, flanking the enemy. He moved quickly, ducking behind trees and rocks, picking off targets one by one. Nearby, Linda held a position near a broken bridge. She fired steady shots, covering the retreat of wounded colonists. "Fall back," she shouted. "Get the civilians. Out." People ran through the smoke, dragging what little they could carry. As the battle raged, Molly's voice crackled over the radio. "Dan, you seeing this?" Daniel ducked behind a rock and tapped his earpiece. "What's happening?" "Something big just dropped behind enemy lines." He looked up. A huge pod had fallen from the sky. It crashed into the forest, sending flames and debris everywhere. "You think it's one of theirs?" he asked. "No," she replied. "Looks human." His heart pounded. If it was human, then maybe help had finally arrived. He gathered a small team and made his way toward the crash site. The closer they got, the more they saw signs of damage, trees torn apart, scorched ground, broken Zilari bodies scattered around. In the middle of it all, the pod sat half buried in the dirt. Its hatch opened with a hiss. Out stepped a group of soldiers. They wore old Earth Force armor, patched and worn. Their leader stepped forward. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar across his cheek. "Looking for a fight?" he asked. Daniel smiled. "Damn right we are." The soldier extended a hand. "Commander Ellis, we got your message. Earth sent us." Daniel shook his hand. "Glad you made it." Ellis looked around. "Heard you've been holding the line alone." "Not alone," Daniel said. "Just first." Ellis gave him a nod. Then he turned to his team. "All right, people. Let's show these bugs what real resistance looks like." With the new soldiers, the plan changed. No longer just defending, the humans began pushing forward. Ellis and his team took command of the front line, coordinating attacks and setting up heavy weapons. Molly led airstrikes using drones and old fighter jets. Tom and his crew built barriers and traps that slowed the Zilari advance. And Daniel stayed where he always was, in the thick of it. He led ambushes, sabotaged enemy machines, and kept the colonists fighting. Linda stayed close, helping, organize the defense and protect the civilians. "You really think we can win this?" she asked one night as they rested. "We already have," he said. Now we just need to finish the job. The turning point came 2 days later. The Zalari had pushed deep into the colony's territory. They were close to taking the last safe zone, the place where most of the civilians had been evacuated. If they lost this land, they lost everything. So Daniel made a call. We take the fight to them. Ellis raised an eyebrow. You serious? Dead serious. They've got numbers, firepower, and tech we don't even understand. Then we use what we've got. And what they had was heart. They launched the attack at dawn. Molly flew. Cover, dropping bombs and drawing attention away from the main force. Ellis led a frontal assault on one side, forcing the Zalari to split their forces. And Daniel led a smaller team through the woods, moving silently toward the enemy's command post. It was a large tent filled with alien officers and strange machines. Lights blinked. Voices spoke in harsh tones. Daniel signaled his team. They struck fast. Grenades flew. Guns roared. The Zalari scrambled in confusion. Daniel reached the center of the tent and found what he was looking for, a control panel connected to the entire fleet. He pulled out a small explosive and planted it. Time to go, he said. They ran. Moments later, the explosion tore through the command post. The Zalari lost communication. Their machines stopped responding. Their leaders were dead, and the humans kept coming. By nightfall, the tide had turned. The Zalari were retreating. Some fled into the forests. Others tried to regroup, but without leadership they were lost. The humans didn't chase them. Not yet. They stood together, looking at what they had done. They had faced impossible odds, and they had won. That night, the survivors gathered around. A fire. Stories were shared. Laughter mixed with tears. People held each other, knowing they had survived something no one thought possible. Daniel sat quietly, watching the flames dance. Linda joined him. You did it, she said. We did, he corrected. She smiled. Still, you started it. He looked at her. Someone had to. They sat in silence for a while. Above them, the stars shined bright. Far away, more ships were on their way. Humans were coming. Not because they were ordered, because they chose, because they knew now, when the call came, one human answered and others followed. The Zalari left in pieces. Some ships fled into space, limping away with broken hulls and burned engines. Others crashed in the forests, leaving behind only smoke and silence. What was once a war zone became quiet again. Not peaceful, never that, but calm enough for people to breathe. Daniel Mercer stood on top of a hill looking out over what used to be the battlefield. Now it was just land torn apart by fire and fear. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired. His hands were covered in dirt and blood. Not all of it his. His suit was torn, his boots worn through, but he was still standing. Linda Carter walked up beside him. She had a bandage on her arm and a deep look in her eyes. It's over, she said. For now, Daniel replied. She gave him a small smile. You ever think we'd make it this far? No, he said honestly. But I never stopped hoping. They watched as colonists moved through the ruins below. Some were helping the wounded. Others were burying the dead. There would be time for celebration later. Right now there was only cleanup. In the days that followed, more humans arrived. Ships came from every corner of human space. Some were military, most weren't. They carried food, medicine, and new weapons. Earth Command sent a message. We see what you've done. We're proud of you. Daniel read it once and folded it. He placed it in his pocket next to the other messages he had saved. He wasn't doing this for medals or praise. He was doing it because someone had to. And now, many had. Commander Ellis and his soldiers stayed to help rebuild. They set up a temporary base near the remains of the old town. Engineers worked on restoring power. Medics treated those who had been hurt. Tom and his team cleared roads and fixed broken machines. Molly flew patrols above the colony, making sure no Zalari were hiding nearby. And Linda helped organize the civilians, making sure everyone had shelter and food. Daniel walked among them, talking, helping, listening. People looked at him differently now, not just as a fighter, not just as a leader, but as something more, a symbol. One night, he sat by a fire with a group of young fighters. They asked questions. How did you know what to do? Why did you come here alone? Do you regret it? He thought about each answer carefully. I didn't always know what to do, he said. I just did something. I came here because I couldn't stand doing nothing. And no, I don't regret it. A boy named Jake, who had fought in the last battle despite being only 16, looked at him. You think other worlds will need us someday? Maybe, Daniel said. But not just us, everyone. He looked around the fire. Humans are strong when we work together. We might not have the best weapons, we might not have the biggest ships, but we have heart. We have will, and we don't give up. Jake nodded slowly. Sounds like something worth fighting for. It is. Weeks passed. The colony began to heal. New homes were built. Farms started growing again. Children played in the streets. Life went on. But the story of Colburn 9 spread. On Titan's Edge, students learned about the battle in school. On Mars Station, workers told stories during their breaks. On Earth, news channels replayed footage of the fight. A lone man had answered a call for help, and thousands had followed. Not because they were ordered, because they believed. Daniel knew it was time to go. He packed his things quietly one morning. He left his gear behind for someone else to use. Linda found him near the landing zone. You're leaving? She asked. Yeah, he said. Where to? Don't know yet. Maybe somewhere else that needs help. She studied him for a moment. Then she smiled. Should have known you wouldn't stay forever. He looked at her. You'll do fine without me. We already are. They stood there for a while, watching the sun rise. Finally, he spoke. Thank you. For everything. For trusting me. For fighting beside me. She nodded. Just promise me something. Anything. If another world calls, you'll answer. He looked toward the sky. I always will. He stepped onto the shuttle. The ramp closed behind him. The ship lifted off, rising into the clouds. Below, people watched. Children waved, fighters saluted. Colonists whispered his name like it was a legend. And far away, across the stars, other humans listened, waiting, watching, ready, because they knew now, when the call came, one human answered and others followed.